The divorce is final, and what happens in a divorce, maybe what's most interesting in a divorce, is the divorce proceedings, not the divorce itself. Right? The reason that couples settle and don't go to divorce court is you don't want the ugly, petty little details of a long relationship or even a short relationship to become public. Once they do, now we start to see who people really are. Who they really are. And this was a couple in Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers who never should have been married to begin with. They just shouldn't. And once they started stop talking, as I've said many a times, as is relationships in marriage, in business, in life, when the communication stops, the relationship stops. And so Bleacher Report has an article out, and it basically goes through chapter and verse of so many different issues. Mike McCarthy, we read you the quotes from yesterday. His first comments after being fired, he was surprised. He was shocked that he was fired. He seems to be the only one. The rest of us thought it was a foregone conclusion that he was out. And the only thing impressive about the Packers was that they had the foresight to do it early rather than wait till it became super, super ugly. Week 3 of the 2017 season, Aaron Rodgers caught on camera barking, "That's a stupid effing call," towards his coach. There's 2015 NFC Championship game where McCarthy called for field goals from the 1-yard line, causing eye rolls galore from the same Aaron Rodgers. 2013, when they're playing Cincinnati and it looked like Rodgers and McCarthy would come to blows. Heck, they even go all the way back to when Aaron Rodgers was first coached by Mike McCarthy. And they went 15-1. But Aaron Rodgers, who like an elephant never forgets, remembers that McCarthy was in the draft room for the San Francisco 49ers when they, his favorite team growing up, frankly, his hometown team growing up, selected Alex Smith ahead of Aaron Rodgers, causing Aaron Rodgers to be left in the green room till the 24th pick, and he's ultimately selected by the Green Bay Packers. There's some other interesting stuff in it. Ted Thompson's inability to stay awake during meetings caused them to figuratively not stay awake during free agency. These are ugly divorce details. And by the way, if you want to know why the NFL settled with Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reid, this is why. No, I get it. This is not court documents, court testimony. Okay? But once you have an order where no one can share any sort of information, all of these, it's the other stuff that comes out. This is why corporations settle, even if they don't believe they've done anything wrong. Because ancillary details like this, which make Aaron Rodgers look petulant, make Mike McCarthy look dumb, make Aaron Rodgers look like a jerk for pointing out that he believed that Mike McCarthy had the lowest football IQ of anybody he ever played for. Hell, if you actually go look into it, it says that they ran the same routes. The wide receivers ran the same routes for 7 years. You know? So if you want to know why Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reid were given money, now reported as less than $10 million by the NFL, if they didn't, why would you do it if you didn't collude? This is why. Because once the details emerge, they don't even have to necessarily do with the case at hand. It's all the other stuff that comes out. Because this stuff looks ugly. 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 And it makes Aaron Rodgers look really hard to coach, and it makes Mike McCarthy look really hard to employ. I'll say this. The Packers did McCarthy a favor by firing him early. It gave him the ability to go and explore and get another job. I'll also tell you this. The Jets had a chance to hire Mike McCarthy. They had a young quarterback. And instead, they chose a guy who wasn't winning a ton in Miami. Why? Because they had a body of work. They called around the NFL. And people said, Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is tough to work with, but you'd be tough to work with too if your offense was the same for 7 straight years and everybody knew what was coming, right? Why would Adam Gase, who looks like he's chasing a bee with his eyes, be a better hire when he hasn't won bubkiss as a head coach? And his lone success as an offensive coordinator was with the Sheriff, Peyton Manning, in Denver. Why would you hire one over the other? Here's the reason why. Not only did he fail to intellectually impress his quarterback, he obviously didn't intellectually impress the league. Think about all the jobs that were open. Think about all the no names that were hired. Now you know why. The NFL is a really, really smart business. They are looking for the next smart dudes. And Mike McCarthy apparently isn't one of them. Isn't one of them. Maybe most impressive is how good they were in spite of their lack of a relationship, right? Like if you kind of go back and look at it, you're like, man, that was a really beneficial relationship considering the two men clearly didn't like each other. One didn't respect the other, and it wasn't a relationship that was bound to last until death do them part. Like maybe this is a sick and twisted way of looking at it, but they actually succeeded for the most part in spite of the fact that they didn't get along. And when I read it about Mike McCarthy, who was encouraging Aaron Rodgers to make amends with his mom, who he had no relationship with, it just strikes me that Mike McCarthy has no idea about who Aaron Rodgers is or what he stands for. His lack of personal investment in his quarterback, his lack of understanding in who he was and what his beef was with his parents, showed beyond any reasonable doubt to me, because I am somebody who I know Aaron Rodgers well enough to I know what his issue is, but I also know that I'm never going to say it on air. Because those are the type of things which get you out of the Aaron Rodgers circle of trust. And by the way, it's a personal thing. It's not any of your business. It's definitely not any of Mike McCarthy's business, but it's a wall issue with Aaron Rodgers. And you don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. But you know what you probably shouldn't do? Probably shouldn't encourage your quarterback to make amends when he has no desire to do so. And then the one guy who he did respect, Rodgers I'm talking about, who he did respect, who did call him on the carpet, who did intellectually challenge him, Alex Van Pelt, you fired because you're insecure that he was after your job. And if you're insecure, if you're insecure about your job and worried about keeping your job, you'll end up losing your job anyway. And that's what happened to McCarthy. Dude, you got to know your employees. You got to know who works for you, what they do best, how they operate, what gets the most out of them. Invest in them as people. Understand their psychological makeup. And hey, every once in a while, there's nothing wrong with calling somebody in and going, you know what? I was wrong on that. It doesn't mean that Aaron Rodgers is always right. It doesn't mean that you can't call out Aaron Rodgers, but when you do, you better be prepared for him to question why you're questioning him. Look, my takeaway is Aaron Rodgers is everything that I thought he was. Everything he appears to be anytime I've interacted with him or I've read about him is like, look, that guy is tricky. He's really smart. He knows he's really smart. He's really talented. He knows he's really talented. He's challenging. But guess what? There's most people in the business world who are really successful can in fact be challenging. There's just different ways to be challenging. And Mike McCarthy, caught up in the old school world of having a huge ego, all hat and very little cattle, got caught in the transitioning NFL when intelligence works and leadership is something that you have to understand the different mental characteristics and makeups of your players. The divorce proceedings coming out are really telling, and now you know why so many people settle. Tyler Dunne joins us. He writes for Bleacher Report. Tyler, we've been talking about your article all afternoon long. So I'm wondering, you point out that when they were at their peak, They were finding mismatches, and Aaron Rodgers' stunning accuracy and cerebral quarterback play was incredible. But then the talent drained. Why? What happened? Why did they fall asleep at the wheel, literally and figuratively?
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for having me, man, and you just nailed it. It really was this sublime, unstoppable force of an offense. I mean, Ryan Grant's talking about going into meetings, and their opponents are building up an opponent, whether it's the Vikings, the Bears, and they're chuckling inside. I mean, because they know nobody can stop them. They know exactly what they're going to run, and that talent would win. Greg Jennings will beat you one-on-one. Jermichael Finley will dominate your linebacker in coverage. I mean, Jordy Nelson on back shoulder throws, are you kidding me? But I just think that everybody just kind of got, full of their own juice, as one scout put it with McCarthy, and drunk off success, drunk off power, and thought they were the reason why. And when it's the two most important people within the organization, the head coach and the quarterback, that's a problem. I mean, Mike McCarthy gave Aaron Rodgers that freedom, pre-snap, post-snap, to kind of freelance, and he took more and more advantage of that freedom as that talent drained, as they didn't keep all those receivers or they got older, and it just became a mess because McCarthy didn't adapt, and really they're both to blame equally. I mean, that was something that came up again and again. There were really strong opinions on both sides just by posing that simple question to guys, what the heck happened? A lot point the finger at the quarterback's personality, the quarterback's leadership, that insubordination. A lot say the coach just checked out.
Why did McCarthy fire Alex Van Pelt?
With Van Pelt and all assistants in Green Bay, and I don't know if this is uncommon. I think a lot of teams do this, to keep continuity. He'd give them security, multi-year contracts, but assistant coaches weren't able to interview, for other jobs when the get was good. So, I mean, when they're going to the NFC Championship game, against Seattle, and, an offensive coordinator or QB coach could get a big-time job like Ben McAdoo did. For other guys, they're kind of like, they can't get out of the situation because he's not letting them get those interviews. So I think with Van Pelt, he became really close with Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers respected him as an intellectual equal. He was a former quarterback. I think Van Pelt pushed him and challenged him. And McCarthy from what I've heard, he wanted Van Pelt to get close with Rodgers on and off the field. And it just got to a point where, he was maybe a little threatened by him. And when Van Pelt's contract was up and he had missed his opportunities to get an OC job elsewhere, but wanted to stick around at that point, McCarthy just didn't retain him. I mean, and that was something that came up a few times with people in the organization. So Mike McCarthy really could have saved himself if he was open to that idea of a bright offensive mind, an innovator, whether somebody outside the organization to come in, run the offense, adapt because the talent just wasn't there anymore. But he did not want to go that route, and it just ended up kind of biting him in the butt.
Was that the beginning of the end?
Honestly, if you're talking beginning of the end, I think it's crazy enough. I think the seeds were really planted the day that they became this arranged football marriage. Aaron Rodgers, he holds grudges, and it's what makes him great. It's what makes him different. That chip on the shoulder is real. It's unlike anybody in any sport. It's MJ level, Kobe level. Yet he would not forget that Mike McCarthy chose Alex Smith, number one, and was a part of that decision with San Francisco, and he sat in that green room for 4.5 hours. So it was planted there. It got worse even through the success, even when they're winning the Super Bowl, even when they're going 15-1. He's talking to people close to him at the time, saying that he's bailing his coach out. The wrong plays are getting called, but the wrong personnel. Kind of describes him as a buffoon of sorts, and he just didn't respect him. I think that's probably it. I mean, early on, when you think they had this great thing going, there wasn't a lot of respect there, and it came to a head in 2018 when he really was taking that to a different stratosphere and changing plays regularly and doing what he wanted post-snap regularly.
It does strike me, Tyler Dunne, who's authored an article for Bleacher Report that kind of goes into the dysfunction that led to the breakup in McCarthy and Rodgers in Green Bay. You can follow him on Twitter at Ty Dunne, Tydunne. Tyler Dunne joining us on the Doug Gottlieb Show on Fox Sports Radio. It's interesting because look, the rest of the league had to know how stale their offense got, and a lot of this had to get back to, for example, the Jets, who many people thought, young quarterback, why not put him with their young quarterback, and yet they passed. How much of this is the real reason that Mike McCarthy doesn't have a head coaching job?
People in the NFL know these things, right? I mean, and they're all over the place. I mean, you see a lot of former Packer guys, with other teams. Look at Cleveland. I mean, they had a head coaching vacancy themselves. I was guilty as charged. I'm thinking that's a perfect, situation for Mike McCarthy to go to Cleveland, work with Baker Mayfield. He's got John Dorsey there, Elliott Wolf, Alonzo Highsmith, a lot of guys. Yet they stuck with Freddie Kitchens. They had a good thing going there. They're just going to keep it. I think that by and large, people look at the film and they don't see the route combinations. They don't see the misdirection, the motion. There was a source there in the front office with the Packers who's no longer there, who told me that McCarthy basically ran the same routes for 7 years, and cornerbacks on other teams in the division are literally calling those routes out pre-snap. Remember early on with that slant, Rodgers would hit Jennings or Driver on a slant. It was like automatic. He said that just disappeared because they knew it was coming, and teams know this.
So what's left in Green Bay? I mean, look, their talent is decent. There's also a piece in there where Ted Thompson was falling asleep in meetings.
Yeah, he was not Ted the last couple years at least. A little vague on when his health started to go downhill, but yeah, there was somebody in those meetings just said Ted is literally falling asleep, slurred speech, and nobody stepped in to kind of save him from himself, and he's kind of running the show. The way he put it is like, this is the GM? Are you kidding me? So, I mean, there's blame to go around. I think if to drive it forward, the shining light here, if you're a Packer fan, is Mark Murphy is stepping in. It's a little overdue. I mean, he should have stepped in when Ted's health was going downhill. Ted should have stepped in when the relationship between Rodgers and McCarthy was beyond repair. But finally, Murphy has stepped in. They believe in Matt LaFleur. They think that he'll challenge Aaron Rodgers. Big picture, they think he'll challenge the team. They think this is the right choice for the team. So they basically told Aaron, look, this is who we're going with. We don't necessarily need your approval, in so many words. Don't be the problem. Don't be the headline. Let's get this thing together because there's still a Super Bowl window open. And I think that's good for the Packers. They need somebody to take charge because, they don't really have that Jerry Jones owner. They don't have that one voice to really kind of ball up a fist and slam it on the table. That they needed somebody to do that, and that de facto owner is Murphy. I think that's a good sign moving forward. Now, will Aaron Rodgers look in the mirror and be self-aware and take coaching because, for better or worse, he hasn't really played within the confines of an offense in quite some time.
Yeah, you mentioned LaFleur. You mentioned Aaron Rodgers. It's interesting. Getting to know Aaron Rodgers a little bit, he is a guy that can run hot and cold and completely shut people out. How has he reacted to the coaching change thus far to people inside those front offices?
That's a great question. One I tried to figure out best I could. I think it's up in the air. They haven't been together a lot. They haven't spoken a lot. Aaron Rodgers is out of the country really when LaFleur was named the coach. It took him a while to talk. I think Greg Jennings said, knowing Aaron Rodgers like he knows him, he thinks he's going to make life tough on him. Jermichael Finley said, look, this is a guy making $200 million, 180 he could actually make. And he sees a self-entitled quarterback who's going to just take what he's done and take it to a new level because he got paid. I guess.
But he's Tyler. We would all agree he's not an idiot, and whatever self-awareness he may at times lack, he doesn't lack awareness for kind of the world in general, and he's got to know that he's got to work with somebody if he wants to get back to the Super Bowl, and that will cement his legacy, and that is important to him, is it not?
I would think so. I would hope so. I mean, for the Packers' sake, will he hand the ball off to running backs 47 times in a conference championship game like a Tom Brady? It's little things like that, maybe taking that throw underneath the defense that's there instead of holding the ball for the play downfield. He's going to have to make those sacrifices, as Greg Jennings put it, and Jennings isn't so sure that he'll make those sacrifices.
Tyler Dunne, read his piece on Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy and everything that's been going on inside the Green Bay Packers. It's outstanding. It's available at Bleacher Report, or just follow Tyler on Twitter at TYDunne, D-U-N-N-E. Tyler, great stuff. Thanks so much for joining us, man. Really appreciate it.
Hey, you got it, man. Thanks so much for having me on.
Pleasure is all mine.